Hello everybody, Céad Míle Fáilte, Ruairí McKiernan here. I'm coming to you live from Lahinch, County Clare on the wild west coast of Ireland. You're all very welcome. We have people joining us from all over Ireland and all over the world. It's a great honor for me to host this event. I'm a long-time supporter, fan, collaborator with Afri, one of my favorite organizations in Ireland for a variety of reasons. They may be small, but they're very powerful, significant, and hold a very special place in Ireland and in my heart for peace, for justice, for human rights, and for the planet. And I think we can all agree that these are important themes in the world right now. So we're going to be hearing from a variety of amazing speakers, hearing some stories of hope and possibility, and also having some wonderful poetry. We have two very fine poets with us, and some music as well. We have a very special guest now to get us started. Rita Minehan, there's a lot we can say about her, but she really is a torchbearer. She's been holding the flame for a long, long time. The Brigidine, she's a Brigidine sister, but she's a torch carrier for healing, for truth, for justice, not just in Kildare, but around Ireland and indeed around the world. For many decades now, the Brigidine sisters in Kildare have been keeping the light alive and a flame alive. And this is Brigid that symbolizes different things to different people in different ways. But generally, there's a sense in the Afri community that the Brigid tradition is one of holding truth, holding power, holding community in a sacred way that can be secular, non-secular, whatever different people's interpretation. But it's a very special time of the year as well. And I think that's the big significance. The season of Imbolc, or coming from the Irish language, Imbolg, coming from the word in the belly, pregnant with possibility in the belly. And if this could be a time of possibility for us all to reimagine the world. So that's some of the intention behind this event, to start to think about the different possibilities. So I'm going to invite Rita Minehan now to light the flame, and she will be joining us now. She'll be with us for a couple of minutes.
I feel privileged to carry the Brigid flame to Afri's 29th Justice and Peace Conference. I was with Afri at the first Féile Bríde conference in Kildare in 1993, when it was celebrating 10 years of its St. Bridget's Peace Cross campaign. It was, we thought, a once-off conference. Here we are, 29 years later. At that first conference in 1993, Afri invited the leader of the Brigidine sisters, Mary Teresa Cullen at that time, to relight the Bridget flame, a flame that had been lighting in Kildare for over 1,500 years and extinguished possibly in the 16th century. The flame was relit at the opening of the Afri conference, and before it concluded, a spark was taken from the flame. It has been tended ever since by the Brigidine sisters in Solas Bhríde. It burns today as a beacon of hope, justice and peace for our world. The relighting caused great excitement and caught the imagination of people all over the world and has drawn many pilgrims to Kildare. Have you observed what has been happening this past week in relation to marking St. Bridget's Day? A message from President Higgins, a message from Taoiseach, media coverage extensive, especially the weaving of the St. Bridget's cross. I believe this could not have happened overnight. I think Afri lit a spark in Kildare town in 1993. That spark has been tended for the past 29 years in Solas Bhríde, and it has burst into fire in 2021. Gard Míle Maithagriv, enjoy this wonderful conference.
Thanks so much, Rita. It was absolutely wonderful to have you connecting with us. Obviously, there's so much we could say about wanting to be here in person or be connected together. Generally, this event takes place in County Kildare, Kildare town. So obviously, we're now creating a global village. We have people joining us from around the world. We have some wonderful musicians here. We have Dee Armstrong from one of Ireland's most prolific bands, Sikhulekile. She's going to perform for us now, and she's joined by her son Louis, who is a fantastic musician. So I'm going to invite them into the event now, and looking forward to some music for a few minutes, and then we will return with lots more music, guest speakers and poetry.
Hi there, I'm Dee, this is Louis.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having us. We're delighted to be playing at this festival. These are two tunes. One is an old Jewish tune and it's called Féilé, and the other is a tune I wrote years ago called Django's. Thank you, Joe and all at Afri for having us. We're very honoured. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy this.
we're keeping this tradition going, which is an extraordinary one that began 29 years ago when we went to Kildare to do a once-off event. And 29 years later, we're still going back. And, I suppose the explanation for that is really one word, which is hospitality. And, Brigid was famous for her hospitality. It was one of her charisms. And certainly that tradition is alive and well in Kildare today. There's a story or a legend maybe that the town of Kildare grew up around Brigid's hospitality because people came to visit her and they were made so welcome that they never went home. Now we generally go home at the end of the event, but we keep on returning. And, we've had an extraordinary 29 years. Next year will mark 30 years. So that should be a great event. And we look forward to that. And we look forward to being there in person next year. Last year, people will remember we had people like Mary Reynolds and Claire O'Grady Walsh speaking. And Claire spoke about the issue of seed sovereignty, which she had just written a book about, a book which I have here beside me. And since then, there has been great developments that Claire is now establishing a seed sovereignty centre in Trinity College. So watch out for that. Great news in this bleak time.
Joe has asked me to speak a little bit about New Hope and springtime. I was thinking about it this morning. We got some bad news in our household this morning in relation to somebody in the wider family that has left us. And yeah, I've just been thinking about the challenges that people are going through at the moment. And I'm very conscious that there's a couple of 100 people joining us from around Ireland and around the world at the moment. And every one of us will have our own unique challenges right now, whether it be health-wise, again, through bereavement, through missing loved ones, not seeing loved ones, not being able to hug loved ones, not be able to meet up, not be able to gather, not be able to have fun. So it's a very challenging time in so many different ways. And I can't speak to what that means to you personally, but I feel it's important to honor it if we are to talk about hope. I was on the radio yesterday and the interviewer asked me for a story from my book. I have a book called Hitching for Hope. And the story that came to mind was a story of a man going through a moment of despair, really. And the interviewer asked me, well, what has that got to do with hope? And it was an interesting question. And I suppose what came to me in the moment, and it's a term I've heard recently, is that you need to feel it to heal it. And what I'm finding is that I feel that we need to create more space for each other, just to be heard, just to take a moment, just to take a pause. And it's within that moment, within that pause, that perhaps we can start to breathe. And it's within those breaths that perhaps we start to feel that hope. Now, traditionally in Irish culture, February 1st is seen as the first of spring. The daffodils, I have some daffodils here behind me, the daffodils start popping out and nature starts to come alive. And you do see now a lot of debates raging every year on Twitter and elsewhere around, well, is it really the first of spring? The weather's terrible and so on. Some people would say, mid or the 21st, the spring equinox, maybe March 21st, or then even some people would suggest May. But for me, I think this time of the year does have a spring-like quality in terms of possibility, in terms of new energy, brighter days. And it comes after the season of Samhain, the deepest darkness, the darkness where we go into the pit and we see what needs to be let go. We see what dreams need to be dreamt. We plant new seeds. This event is themed Seeds of the Heart. And so perhaps now we start to see those seeds blossoming. We start to see buds of possibility to reemerge. But I do empathize with that idea that this may be not the true spring, the full spring. Maybe it's the start of the ritual. And within that, I suspect there's a fragility. It's easy to dismiss it because it doesn't feel like full hope has arrived. We don't feel or see the full blossoming of nature. We don't see the change in our lives, the change in our world. But I think there's something about that fragility. I was just reflecting on it this morning, just seeing the buds. Hope is fragile. It needs minding, it needs caring, it needs tending. And just because it maybe isn't in full force or in full power, I think that shouldn't mean that we dismiss it or disregard it or let go of it and fall into a sense that there is no hope. And the danger in the world right now is that when we look around, whether it be climate change, the whole challenge of ecosystem collapse, what's happening in our seas, our waters, in our air, what's happening in our politics, the disconnection with people, the rampant inequality, the treatment of survivors of mother and baby homes, the treatment of survivors and those that didn't survive the cervical cancer scandal. We look at the people of Gaza, Yemen, all around the world struggling for basic human rights. A woman from Mongolia killed in Dublin brutally, died during the week. Another woman burnt in a car in Cork the other day. I don't mean to create a lot of gloom for you. You've had enough of that. Our newspapers are full of it. But I think let's just name where we're at, that sometimes it is hard to be hopeful. Sometimes it's easy to fall into despair. And some of us can hold that more than others. So it's the more vulnerable that I'm thinking of right now, those that are really clinging on. And it's an appeal for them and to them and with them that let's be there for each other. Let's create the collective of hope, the family of hope, the tribe of hope, the movement of hope. Let's look out for each other. Even if it means getting off this event today and texting or phoning or emailing somebody that you feel maybe needs that little bit of an extra boost. I think it's so important right now. And so the compassion for others in the world right now, I'm thinking of refugees and asylum seekers in Ireland right now as well, particularly those in direct provision that don't have the same family connections to us, that are maybe isolated in what is a really terrible system that we're going to be talking about later on in this event. But also compassion for ourselves, compassion to be kind to ourselves, to take a pause, to tell yourself it's okay. I remember waking up several months ago and I'd been pushing along trying to launch my book and promote my book, which isn't all that easy in a pandemic. But I just woke up with this voice whispering in my head saying, it's okay, we're in a pandemic. And I know different people have different views on the pandemic and what it means for us on social, political levels and all of that. But to have compassion for the challenges that we face is so important. You know, those of us that are involved in social justice and activism, we want to be pushing forward all the time. We want to be creating change. We want to be leading a light. We want to be supporting others. But sometimes we need to just pull back and put the focus on ourselves. Be kind to ourselves. Give the kindness we give to others to ourselves. So I think that's another realm of hope, is to give yourself hope, to give yourself that kindness. And to create that community. You know, if the community isn't around you, if you have lost that sense of connection with others, then let's find new ways to do it. Let's do it through live streaming when the glitches don't happen. Let's just find it through group calls. Let's just find other ways of making magic happen. You know, where there is a will, there is always a way. And I think community and connection are so vital. And we see that now, that when we lose it, we kind of revalue it. And I envisage a resurgence of community, a resurgence of connection. And I'm dreaming up new plans for when we get back into that, when we get to have our festivals again, when we get to have our events together again. But look what's happening here. We have people from Texas, from Arizona, from all over Ireland, from New York, from Liverpool, all joining us in a community that maybe wouldn't have been possible to even get to Kildare for financial or logistical reasons. So there's hope in that. There's hope that we're all part of a movement of change. There's hope that perhaps some of the hate and rhetoric is being dialed down. Perhaps there's been changes in the last week I've seen around the Paris Climate Accord, around arms sales to Saudi Arabia. It's those little glimmers, they're so easy to dismiss. And I feel that cynicism is an enemy of hope. I see it all the time. I get the occasional email telling me to feck off or whatever it is. And I understand that. But you know, there's that term, the audacity of hope, but hope does take a bit of courage. It takes a summoning up from within inside ourselves. And I think it takes imagination as well, and it takes choice. I've been listening to Edith Egar, the Holocaust survivor. I'm not sure if I pronounced her name right, but she has a new book out called The Choice. And I think so much of it boils down to choice. Do we choose, and Chomsky talks about this too, do we choose a world of hope? Hope is a choice. What is the opposite of, do we choose despair? So this is a moment for us to choose. And it's within that choice that I think it contains the future. It contains the DNA of where we go from here. So belief is core. We have to believe it in our bones that we can build this better world that we know is possible, that we can reorganize, redefine our systems with politics, ecology, culture, spirituality, whatever it is, to bring power back to the people, to bring community back to its true place in our culture, to celebrate the arts, to celebrate artists, and to celebrate our successes, to celebrate the things that we are winning at, the things that we are getting right. You know, there's so much that is going right. And I think for me, gratitude has been a big part of that. You know, like there's many a moment that I can complain and say, well, this isn't going right, or this thing didn't go my way. But then I remind myself that I have shelter, I have a roof over my head, I have food in my stomach, I have access to clean water, I've had access to education, I know people, I've loved ones in my life. Just to remind yourself of those simple things. So I know I'm talking about very simple concepts, but unfortunately, I think the simplicity can get lost in the complexity of what's happening in the world right now, that there's so much noise. And so dialing down the noise and just reflecting and taking a moment can be so helpful. And I think that's at the core of what this event is about. It's a moment to reflect, to pause, to listen to each other, to hear from some voices of hope and possibility. I, for one, think that this is a moment of upheaval. It is a moment of turbulence. It is a moment of destruction. There's no getting away from all of that. But it's also a moment of potential reimagining, a potential rebuilding, a potential to really, truly honor and save ecology. You know, because if there's no getting away from ecology, that if we don't get to the bottom of our dysfunction and our disconnection with nature, then there is no future, there is no hope. So nature is the hope, and our connection with nature is the hope. So I thank you again for joining in. I thank you for your patience. And I welcome you all, and those that are joining us from abroad, please come next year. Next year, let's put it in the diary. Next February, let's have the Hope Party in Kildare, and probably we will do it online as well. We'll do both, and we'll have one hell of a party together. We'll get the music going, and we'll have a good time. Part of the tradition of Féile Bríde is to plant a tree, and a tree being obviously seeding new roots into the earth, and then to grow below the earth and to grow above the earth. And tree planting has long been part of the Afri Féile Bríde tradition.
Planting a tree has always been a very important part of Féile Bríde. Usually we would do this in Solas Bhríde. Unfortunately, we can't do it this year for obvious reasons, but we want to continue the tradition of planting a tree to mark this great festival. Therefore, I'm planting a hawthorn tree in the back garden. The hawthorn tree is a very important tree. It's a native Irish tree. It's a great tree for biodiversity. It produces fruit and flower. Many people will remember over years the sign of the hawthorn in full bloom around the countryside. There was a lot of superstition around the tree. I remember growing up, nobody would touch a lone hawthorn tree. It was regarded as something sacred, something not to be touched. It's a beautiful time of year. Féile Bríde marks the point at which we've rounded the corner from winter to spring. And nature reflects this hope, this breakthrough, this sense of a new beginning. Even though we can't ignore the difficult times that we're living through at the moment, we can still see hope in nature when we look around, in the snowdrops, in the buds beginning to emerge. Let's make 2021
a year of biodiversity, of restoration of habitats, of reclamation of lost seeds and plant varieties, of planting, of sowing, of becoming guardians of nature, of becoming gardeners for biodiversity, of becoming carers for our precious planet.
Thanks, Joe. That was it's wonderful to know that that tree was planted now for all of us, really, to celebrate this moment and to really just honor the hope that most of us are bringing into our hearts. And if you don't have that hope in your heart right now, maybe hopefully you will have a little bit more by the end of the event. And we're going to be hearing from some people that are doing really amazing work on the ground right now. We're going to be hearing from an amazing project in County Monaghan called Síolta Chroí. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Karen and Garrett onto the screen. To get started, I'm going to ask Karen, if you don't mind, to tell us a little bit about yourself and your own journey behind. We'll get into the ins and outs of Síolta Chroí, but just a little bit of your own journey, where you're from, and some of the key influences that have brought you on this journey.
Wait, thanks, Rory, and hello, everybody. This is it's just such an honor to be here, and I really was very moved by your words there, Rory, about hope, and then I loved seeing you plant the hawthorn, Joe. It's got real meaning for the heart as well, so it's wonderful. Okay.
Take your time. Everyone's allowed a moment here, and
we're all breathing deep.
Yeah.
So a little bit about what's brought me here and what's influenced me. So I'm from County Wicklow, and I grew up with a really wonderful, supportive family. We didn't really live in the country. We lived in the countryside, so close enough to the town to not be too far into the country. But now I'm living up here in County Monaghan with Gareth and our daughter Lily. And here we are, properly in the country. But the things that have influenced me, I suppose, over the last few years or through my lifetime, I suppose, when I think about that, I think about especially the time I spent in Colombia and Guatemala. I kind of had a bit of a draw to Latin America after my studies. I'd done a lot of traveling, but I always found it, I found it challenging in many ways. I studied a lot around inequality, really interested in social justice issues, and traveling was always a bit difficult because I really wanted to see different places, and I traveled in the global south, but I always felt the privilege that I had and the inequality of that experience kind of took away from it. And then when I finished a master's in peace studies, actually, which is real, I went to Latin America, and there I kind of found a place. I found a way that I was able to meet and explore with people, but also do it in solidarity. I think I found solidarity, and I worked alongside different communities on the US-Mexico border, in Central America, and then later in Colombia. Spent a good bit of that time with an organization called Peace Brigades International, who do incredible work supporting human rights defenders and activists at risk, people who are at the very front lines. Yeah, I really got a real understanding then, I think, of what the issues facing the world are.
Yeah, you definitely had a wide global perspective to bring into the mix to end up then in County Monaghan. And I suspect that had something to do with a charming young man, perhaps, or not. So, Garrett, is your journey been similar? How did this all come about for you? What have been some of the key milestones along the way?
Similar but different, yeah. So I suppose family being a big influence for me, and then I grew up in a small village between sort of Loud Monaghan border, Enniskeane, which is well known for Patrick Kavanagh on the Stony Grey soil of Monaghan. And it's kind of interesting now what we're doing, because there's the connection between, he talked about working the land, and also the sort of spiritual connection in some ways that he talks about before he burnt himself out and then went away to Dublin. But really interesting that. And then sort of got involved in an organization called Development Perspectives, and got involved in development education, or global citizenship education, and beginning to look at the world in a more critical lens, and traveling, and being around East Africa and Palestine, seeing all these inequalities and critical thinking. And then studied in Kimmage Development Study Centre, and just been surrounded by many great thinkers and people. And then, I'm working with like Eco UNESCO and involved in, and then that's the first time I heard of this thing called permaculture, which is kind of one of the key things that we're doing here. And now working in COLOV, the Organisation for International Development Workers and Volunteers. So and also then sort of got involved in Buddhism too. So bringing more of a spiritual connection to, or a consciousness level too. So kind of trying to connect, deepening consciousness with social justice.
Great. And so where did the paths collide, or align rather? Not so much a collision, but a collaboration that led to some magic that we'll be hearing about now. Where did you both converge?
Well, so COLOV in some connections in COLOV, and then Gráinne O'Neill, I see, who's on the call here in YouTube, hired us both to do a piece of work. And so, that's when we sort of connected up properly. It is interesting. On our first date, Karen told me that we'd been interviewed for the same job, and it was between me and her. So she doesn't really let that one slide yet. But we've come back together to collaborate. Yeah.
Lovely.
So yeah.
And
then,
sorry, go on ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, maybe, just at that stage as well. Gareth had already been thinking quite a lot about this idea for Síolta Chroí, which was building a retreat centre, a space where we could do, transformative education and bring sort of spiritual aspect into it as well, and the permaculture aspect. And so already, I think when we met, you'd already come across this space that we're in now.
Yeah, I'd already bought the place too, and then Karen became more and more interested in it too. And I should say, like, Síolta Chroí is a collective. It's more than myself or Karen, and it's growing more in that too. So yeah.
So Karen, we've obviously talked about the backstory now. Like, for people that don't know what Síolta Chroí is, like, what exactly is it, and what are the values that underpin it? Okay,
so what we're trying to do here, what we really want to focus on, is ecosystem restoration. I know both Rory and Joe have mentioned some of the huge problems that are out there on the horizon, or are at this moment in time, and a lot of them around lack of biodiversity and the negative effects of climate change and all of these things. But this hope that we found, and what we're focusing the work at Síolta Chroí on, is regeneration and ecosystem restoration. So this idea that nature can actually be not just, sustained, but actually regenerated. Nature has this power to regenerate. And so that's kind of the hope that drives us. And then what we want to do here, we're kind of working along three different pillars. One is around regenerative culture. So in order for the ecosystem to regenerate, we are part of this ecosystem. So for the ecosystem to regenerate, we also need to work on ourselves, work together, learn how to work more collaboratively, more collectively, and transform our culture, essentially become a more regenerative culture, and work in harmony with the ecosystem that we're a part of. So we understand that has to work as well, and we've both been involved in group facilitation and seen real transformative processes happen for both ourselves and other people at sort of residential retreats and things like that. So that's what we're trying to build here, is a retreat centre where that can happen. Gotcha. And the other areas we're looking at are regenerative food systems, and also ecosystem restoration camps, which we're a part of.
That's wow! It's a very bold vision, and you've got a lot of supporters here and fans. By the way, there's lots of people.
Friends.
You've brought the fan club, which is fair play. So obviously you've built a community and a following around all of this. And I know you say it's a cooperative kind of enterprise as well. But I do know from my own experience that getting anything off the ground brings its own challenges. I don't know if you've had those days where you're just really, second guessing it, or you're just running into brick walls, and, sometimes to bring a vision to life is met with doubts or cynicism or barriers. Can you speak a little bit about that, Karen, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also been mentioned today, the challenges that nobody really foresaw that we're all facing at the moment around COVID, around the pandemic, around the changes that have been, enacted recently. So I suppose, that's kind of how it's our first big challenge. Sorry, we were fundraising to get the match funding for a grant we were very close to getting, and yeah, the pandemic hit at the same time as we launched our crowdfunder, which was unfortunate timing. We still managed to raise quite a bit, but yeah, and then other challenges I suppose have been to do with. I think it's felt a little bit like we've been focusing a lot on trying to get the funding together in order to build the space, and it's just been challenging. I think everybody's, we're all in this at the moment.
We were applying for a grant application, Rural Development Fund, and a lot of work went into it and really shaping the idea. And we found out just before Christmas that we were unsuccessful with that thing. So we're kind of a bit back to the drawing board. I'm like, it won't stop us, but it's like, how do we reapply down the line? Do we do it another way too? So so it's hard to, it's just part of trying to bring something new into the world.
Mm. Yeah, the grant issue, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose we had been hopeful that it would enable us to build the retreat centre and the accommodation block all in one go, and then we could, start with our education work in that way. But now I think we're going to have to take it a little bit more step by step. But that's okay. Step by step
gets the job done. Absolutely. So we're under a small bit of pressure time-wise, and I want to show your video as well. But Gareth, can you just briefly tell me some of the highlights of the project so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, collectively, the working together, and although that's been limited in some ways because of COVID, but yes, we've connected up with many great individuals, people, communities, and in organizations. And one of so we're involved with this community called Ecosystem Restoration Camps, which is a really inspiring project. I'm going to show it at the end, I think, a picture of it. But so definitely working with people and working the land together has been a real high point, a real joy. And actually, so the whole fundraising thing of building the space has been just one of the things that needs to be done, but actually, doing the work, healing the land or planting the trees and being together, sharing time with friends and family. And that's been the highlight so far.
Great.
And long may it continue.
Long may it continue indeed. And Karen, your hope for the future for the project?
Yeah, a bit of what we just said before, building it up step by step, being able to, the real hope is to have people here. We built this space and we were offering this space as somewhere for people to come and to heal, to work the land together, to be here collectively. And the doors, we'd love to open our doors, have people here. But obviously, the world has a different agenda at the moment. So we're really hopeful to have people here. We're running some courses. We're very optimistically, we've put some courses up on our website, which we'll share the link to when we can. And we'd love it if people want to check us out and come and join us. A lot of the courses are around either around the regenerative culture that I spoke to, and then also the work on the land, organic food growing, food systems, permaculture, introduction to permaculture, and obviously yoga. Yeah.
Lovely. It sounds amazing. I can't wait to visit. So folks, I was due to show a photo of yours, and unfortunately I'm not going to get to it because I don't want to risk any further screen sharing technical challenges at the expense of your video. So I will send out that the link to the photograph because I think it's a powerful one. It's a great example of nature recovering in action, if that's okay. So I want to thank you for your time here, and I may get to the photo in another stage of the event. I just need to push it along. So thanks for your understanding. And but in the meantime, I'm going to get that video up, and want to thank you for the amazing work you're doing for all of our benefit, really, and shining a light and walking the talk, as they say, and being such a great inspiration.
Ba 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 ba. We dedicate this place to healing, transformation, regeneration and restoration. To the practice of compassion, we dedicate this place. To the development of wisdom, we dedicate this place.
Though in the world outside there is strife, here may there be peace. Though in the world outside there is hate, here may there be love. Though in the world outside there is grief, here may there be joy.
Not by words or by talking, not by hoping or wishing, but by our own efforts towards learning and expanding our hearts and minds, we dedicate this place.
May our minds become open. May our hearts become full.
May our communication with one another be open, honest and loving.
For the happiness of all beings, for the benefit of all beings, with body, speech and mind, we dedicate this place.
That was powerful. Excellent.
Just just to say thank you to yourself, Rory, and thank you to Joe and to Afri. To just been massively supportive, and we really appreciate it. And you can check out the website. We have a crowdfund that's still live, and we've got the courses coming up. So if people are interested, and hopefully we can connect up in the near future. We are linking in with Afri on another project, the Om Alphabet 2, that Mary Reynolds is going to design. We're going to plant an Om Alphabet as the entrance to Síolta Chroí. So lots to come. We're very early stages, but watch the space.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I congratulate you all. There are lots of comments coming in support of you. You want to just remind us your website address, Síolta Chroí?
Yes, it's www.síoltachroí.ie.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying Féile Bríde this year. Thanks very much to Afri and to Joe for asking me to play. It's always a pleasure. The song I'm going to play is called Tuairim Ndlovu. So get a cup of tea, kick back, and I hope you enjoy.
That was amazing harp music. Thank you so much, Emer. That was beautiful. I really, really, really needed that moment of pause. It was gorgeous. Without further ado, we're going to move along here. Grace, you're very welcome. Grace Wells.
Thanks, Rory. Yeah, well, it's so lovely to be at an event for Bridget reading this particular poem, because this poem came out of a project I was doing for Cashel Arts Festival around the Rock of Cashel in County Tipperary, which was the seat of the Munster High Kings. And to be the king in Ireland at that time, you had to marry the land. You had to marry the land, and the land was the goddess. And you only had sovereignty if you had a particularly respectful relationship with the land, with the goddess. And so that concept of what is called the sacred marriage, or the Bannus Rí in Irish, is very important to me. I feel that, when any of us are born, from the minute we take a breath, from the minute we're nurtured with any kind of food, we're in a sacred marriage with the earth herself. And this poem, I think, for me, even though it's about the High King and the High King is speaking through the poem, it's really about inviting each of us as individuals to think about our relationship with the earth. Because all of these governments, institutions, they're all made of individuals. And if we could get the individuals back into a sacred marriage with the earth, then I think we'll get the governments, we'll get the corporations. So it's one leaf at a time, one individual at a time. So the poem is called Bannus Rí, the High King Speaks. I have always thought she looked her loveliest from here. Here, more than anywhere, she gave herself to me, this ground, our bridal bed. When I married her, she gave me her intricacies: apple blossom, bird song, the salmon's rainbow breast, the white swans and the white geese. The word fesh meant to sleep with the goddess, to be permeated by her. When I married her, I became the mountains. I became the forest. Her soft rain fell, and I grew as grain. When I married her, she turned me copper, gave me the strength of iron. She crowned me with the gold crest's burnished head. In her embrace, I was kingfisher, turquoise, emerald, amber. She released me as falcon on the wing. The veins in my wrists became the rivers of the land. When anything happens to her, it happens to me. It is my relationship with the land which grants me sovereignty, this ground, our bridal bed. For her, it was strewn with the creamy white petals of elderflower, of meadowsweet. She never left our bedchamber without an offering for my palm: acorn, seashell, chrysalis, amethyst, a hazelnut drilled empty and open by one of her creatures. And after her leaving, the room echoed with her, a steady incantation: Tua, 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 meaning people, meaning place.
Wow. That is absolutely powerful. Powerful.
Thanks so much, Rory. Thank you. I'll tell you, I've been thinking about something all day, Rory.
Okay, so well, maybe it's meant to be here.
Until Ruth appears, I'll tell you what I've been thinking about.
Do, please tell us.
One of the troubles that we face as a culture, well, I actually don't really want to talk about Western culture, because I don't really think we're in a culture anymore. We're in an ism, we're in Westernism, we're in capitalism. One of the issues that we face is that we don't really have a language by which to speak of the divine and the sacred within nature. Westernism really relies on English. The English language has been very much shaped by Christianity and Christian thinking, where the God was external, up in the sky. And we need to be able to come back to things like Brigid and a Celtic culture that had a language and still has a language through Gaelic, through Gallego, through all the indigenous languages in the world, where we still have words to describe the spiritual and the sacred in nature. And in English, we can just about get somewhere with something like immanence, the word immanence, it speaks to the spirit within plants. But if you just imagine that the great, huge, vast concept of language that we could have and does exist within the Irish language, to speak of all the very many different ways that spirituality might manifest through nature. And I think that that is one of our most difficult challenges, is to, how can we speak to that when we don't have words, when our culture, our ism, our Westernism has frowned for so long on a close relationship with nature, a sacred relationship with nature. We've been pulled away from paganism. We've been pulled away from being muddy, being dirty, all of those things. We've been pulled away from speaking like cultures and boggers. How can we return to kind of a seeing? I was listening to Mary Condren recently speaking about the Bridget's Cross, and she talked about how the center is possibly the eye of the goddess. And I'm not so sure that it's the eye of the goddess or the invitation for us to see everything in nature as sacred, to see the sacred, to see the divine within nature. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about today, Rory. So I'm sharing that with you. I hope, you know, we're talking about seeds of the heart. The seeds that I would love to see more of is people coming forward with the words about the sacred in nature. If you know them in Irish, let's be speaking them, let's be using them. If you know of terminology in English that we've forgotten or we've let go or we don't use, let's be speaking with that, because that poem that I just read you is my effort to say what I want to say. But wouldn't it be marvelous if we could just do that with one word, a terminology, a phraseology, a library of words to speak of the awe, the immanence, the wonder within nature? Then I think we could put that value back at the center and of our lives in the society and have a culture again. At the moment, we've got capitalism at the center. We need to take that out and put the earth, the sacred earth, at the center. And I believe Bridget does that for us.
I was just thinking that one of the themes for today is when things don't go to plan. And just the fact that you got to share those words, I feel like they're so fitting for where we're at now, is to redefine our language, our connection in every breath and every word. And it feels to me that there's such a, well, there has been traditionally a sacred role for the poet in Irish culture, and perhaps we need the poet back elevated into their rightful throne of influencing and inspiring our consciousness and our systems. That was wonderful. Check out Grace Wells' poetry, folks. And without further ado, I'm going to move on to my next guest. Hi, it's great to have you with us. Ruth, you're going to share some reflections and thoughts specifically around the whole notion of hospitality. One of the things that Brigid of Kildare was famous for was hospitality through the monastery and creating a spirit and a culture of welcome. Can you talk to me about what hospitality has meant for you or means for you in today's world?
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Ruth, Sikhulekile Ruth, but I'm comfortable with Ruth as well. So for me, as a young individual, a young adult, I believe hospitality means opening your home or your heart to someone else, regardless of their background, their history, or their beliefs or whatsoever. It's you welcoming someone beyond looking at them as I'm giving charity, or looking at them and saying, oh, I feel pity for this person. It's about you welcoming that person with warm heart, with warm welcomes, with whatever help that they might need. It's about that. And in terms of hope and insight, it's more of you being able to think about the positive things, endless possibilities, that anything is possible, and enduring whatever difficult that you might face, in this world and saying that at the end of the day, I have hope that this is a situation, this is just a hardship that I'm going through, but I have faith and hope that I will prosper at the end of the day.
Wow, that's powerful.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about your own life and your own journey and how it's brought you to Ireland and what your experiences have been?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I've been here for the past 5 years, going to 6 years now. And the past 4 years, I was in Dare provision, and me coming into Ireland, I came in and I claimed for asylum, and the journey and the process itself, it wasn't easy, and it's still not an easy journey to be going through, because there is always that feeling of like, okay, I was in this process. Will I ever be seen as an individual more than as a once-off asylum seeker or someone who was in the asylum process? So it wasn't an easy journey, and me coming to Ireland after claiming for asylum, I did my best to fight for my education, and now I am studying accounting and finance in the University of Limerick, in my third year, and I'm actually doing my placement right now with Dell.
Wow, you're a busy woman.
Thank you. I try.
So a lot of people have heard about direct provision. Some of us know a little bit, some of us know a lot. But can you maybe just paint a picture for direct provision for people who maybe don't know anything about it, and what your specific experience has been of it?
Yeah. So direct provision is a system that was created to help or to give shelter to the people that are coming into Ireland to claim for asylum. That's a kind of a nutshell of it. So you are provided with bedding, housing, heating, and food, and everything is good for you. So when you hear that, you feel like, oh, they are having a good life. But my experience hasn't been easy, or wasn't easy when I was in DP, because one, I couldn't cook for myself. I couldn't travel or visit people, even if I was 3 years in the system. You are still expected to be treated or to be in a place where it's more like you're in an open prison, if I was to put it like that. Because if you travel for more than 3 days, you have someone to answer to and explain yourself. Oh, I visited this person. You have to give their details, which is more like you are actually limited in building yourself into the community, or expanding yourself outside of direct provision center. Other challenges that I faced was privacy. I couldn't even get enough privacy because I was sharing a room with someone that I never met. And within that, I had to be civil. You were controlled by someone. I was controlling my roommate, in a sense that if I wanted to sleep at 10 and she still wanted to have the light on, I have to tell her to switch off the light because I have to sleep. Or if she wants to switch off the light, it's other way around. So one or the other, there is always a conflict when you're sharing, especially sharing, it is there. But if you're sharing a one single bedroom on a single bed, you only divide it by maybe a 2 meter. 2 meter is even too big. 1 meter. Because everyone now knows their 2 meter distance.
Yeah.
1 meter is way too big. So it's not an easy system to be in, and it's hard.
Do you feel that, you referred to it already, that people hear about food and shelter, but they don't necessarily start to empathize with, like, a home is also like the freedom that you do or don't have in your own home, the sanctuary, the safety, but then the mental health impact for people in direct provision is severe, isn't it?
Exactly, because when you talk about being given food, being provided with the shelter, you think that, oh, they get food. So why are you complaining? Why are you saying that the system is not good? One, I'm African, and my food is prepared by an Irish person who doesn't understand that there is a difference there when it comes to food taste and all stuff like that. And the way they prepare food, it might be the same food. Rice is same all throughout, but the way they prepare it, it's different from my taste. So that flexibility to cook it the way I want, that thing has been taken from me. As an elder, just imagine a woman who cannot cook for her husband because she's in direct provision. They have to queue up to get food. So how is that different from direct provision.
Yeah.
And coming back to mental health, it's just way beyond explanation.
And how do you feel, how do you stay hopeful in all of this, and where do you see the hope for changing that system?
With all of this and with the theme that we are in terms of hospitality and understanding them, the hope at the end of the tunnel, it's more of not everyone or the system has been brutal to me, because if it wasn't for direct provision, I don't think I would have got the opportunity to be in that level education. There is someone there who saw that people in direct provision, they are not entirely stupid. They are not. They are people that have brain. They are people that can work. Let's give them an opportunity to actually go to that level education. Let's give them an opportunity for them to work, because if the system is training me, constantly training me to be dependent on that, there is no hope for me to be progressing in life. I end up being dependent on the system throughout. But the hope comes in when I see that there is someone that truly believes that I'm a human being. Me being an asylum seeker does not mean that I'm not capable of working, I'm not capable of getting access to education or to be integrated into the Irish community. Because at the end of the day, when I am done with this system, or when I'm out of the direct provision system, I am going to be part of Irish community. So how do we look forward through that? I reach out, I create my programs. I have a restart project that aims to integrate asylum seekers into the Irish community. That way, I am saying, I'm not happy about the system, but I'm not going to sit and just talk about it. I'm going to do something about it and reach out to the Irish community and reach out to the people who are in direct provision, because they're already feeling lonely. And it's almost impossible to be constantly volunteering to things. At the end of the day, you ask yourself, when am I going to use this skill? But now there is a bit of hope, because there is a right to work. There is a bit of scholarship that are being offered to people who are in direct provision. So that's my hope. That's where it comes from. And not every Irish person looks at direct provision or people in direct provision as people who are entitled. There are people that are helping out. There are organizations like Doris Lumini, Irish Refugee Council, and Central Runners. Those are the programs that I've been involved with and worked with so much.
Can you talk to me about how people maybe can become more connected with people in direct provision? Because one of the things I've noticed locally and nationally is that direct provision centres are so often situated. Well, firstly, they're privately run, profit-making enterprises, which is its own scandal in itself. And so there are more economically viable alternatives. But the fact that they're situated in geographically isolated settings separates asylum seekers from the rest of the community, doesn't it? So how can those of us that want to make friends and reach out and become more connected and integrated do so?
Yep. Firstly, I think we, as an Irish community, we need to actually educate ourselves more in terms of direct provision. What is it? How is it? How is it situated? Where is it situated, and how they run it? And actually listen to the grievances of people that are in direct provision, so that when you go there, you want to reach out to the community. When you go to Doris Lumini, for instance, when you go to NAS in Cork, when you go to Cassie in Kildare, or Irish Refugee Council in Dublin, you know that you're going there to give back and not see those people as a charity that I'm just going to donate few things. Create a conversation. You might find that the person was actually an accountant before they came here. Create a conversation, find out more about the person, reach out to the organizations first, because the direct provision themselves, the direct provision centers, they hardly open up to people, outside people. So for you to have access to be able to integrate yourself into the community of people who live in direct provision, you have to try your best to reach out to the organizations that are already working with people who are in direct provision. And most of all, educate yourself first. Do not go there with a mentality of, oh, Ruth has been in direct provision for the past 4 years. Go there with, when you're trying to help someone find a job, how do you approach that? Go with that type of mentality.
Yeah.
Then we are able to build a community in that sense.
Yeah. Wow. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time and sharing your own story. And I wish you every success in every stage of your next journey. Ireland's lucky to have you here with your bright, shining smile. And
thank you.
So thanks, Ruth, and we look forward to talking again.
No worries, Rory. Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone has taken something from the talk, and may hope and light continue to shine in your hearts in this pandemic, and may you have good life. Look at something and find positivity in it, and everything is going to be okay.
Just one quick one before you go. Any organization, your own Restart project, anything you want to tell people about in terms of links?
Oh, yes. If you go to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, we have Restart. I'm not sure. We're kind of doing a rebranding, whether it's still Restart UL or it's Restart Ireland. It's a social enterprise that aims to integrate asylum seekers into the Irish community. I can send you the link, and then you can post it down on the comments, or for people who will be interested for that.
Okay, so you'll find it under Restart UL or Restart Ireland, and type in Restart University of Limerick. I think you'll find it.
Yes.
Great. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Rory. Bye.
Okay, folks, I'm really grateful to these amazing speakers and the musicians and the poetry. I'm seeing incredible praise. We have a few hundred people still with us from all over Ireland, all over the world, part of the Féile Bríde celebration, part of the Afri community, the Afri family, keeping the light alive during these dark and troubled times, and breathing new hope and new light into the world. Someone else that is very much on this path and very dedicated on this road is now about to join us. She's originally from County Wexford, but she's joining us from Scotland. Sinead Fortune, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Rory. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm doing good. Things are settling down here. They were a wee bit bumpy at the start, but we got the boat out to sea and we're sailing along okay.
Excellent.
And actually, speaking of sailing at sea, I heard a rumor that you're a fan of sea shanty singing. Is that correct?
Oh, I don't know where you heard that from, Rory. Yeah, well, I was in a sea shanty band before they were cool on TikTok.
Oh, so, yeah, you're a trendsetter, yeah.
Yeah, always ahead of the trend, never on it. Yeah, but no, since I moved to Scotland, I joined a band. We do kind of punk sea shanties, but lots of great fun. And a really lovely kind of music form to get people to forget their woes and just have a nice time. So yeah,
I think we could all do with a bit of singing and re-rog, rula, as they say. So Sinead, you're with the Gaia Foundation in the UK. We'll get to talking a little bit more about Gaia shortly, and specifically the work that you do in your role. But can you tell me a little bit about how this, I think you're originally from Blackwater, County Wexford. Can you talk to me a little bit about your own journey towards this work?
Sure. Yeah, I suppose it's been quite a strange one. As you say, I was born in Blackwater, but moved out to the US shortly. Or a few years after. So I kind of grew up both in Ireland and the US, moved back to Ireland, moved here, there and everywhere, Iceland for a while.
Oh.
I grew up in the woods, and I always had a really close connection to just being out in nature. And through my studies and through whatever paths I took, that was always the thing that called to me the most. So when I moved to Scotland, I studied environment and development for my master's, and I was particularly interested in communities and behavior change in communities, and how to make people change their behavior. It's one of the most difficult things in the world. And I thought that, number one, the kind of the natural community structure that we have as humans is very powerful. It's a very powerful way of enacting positive change. And also food, because everyone eats it, everyone loves it. It's cultural, it's emotional, it's physical, it's tangible, it's tactile. And I found that food was a fantastic way of connecting with people. So I became a community grower, and I started growing in some of the areas of strongest deprivation in Glasgow. With really deprived communities who, they were food deserts. They had no access to fresh fruit and veg, and teaching them how to grow their own food. And that connection that I went on, the journey that I took myself between I suppose, academically studying it and actually starting to live it, actually starting to grow my own food and starting to teach other people to grow their own food, it's a very powerful one. And I'm sure there are many people watching today who do grow their own food, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, because it goes far beyond practicalities. And so yeah, that's the journey that I took, and it went from growing to seed, which is, you know, the foundation of all growing. Interestingly, my path came to Gaia, which links. I'm managing the Seed Sovereignty program, but Gaia itself has work all over the world, and it really focuses on community and that kind of heart of what makes us human.
So can you go into a little bit more detail about the work globally with Gaia, but also then more specifically in this part of the world as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gaia's actually been going for 35 years. So I long before I joined, I've only been lucky to be involved with it since 2019. But Gaia started in communities in Africa and communities in the Amazon, working to revive biocultural diversity. And what I mean by that is that it was communities as part of an ecosystem. So oftentimes in modern life, we see ourselves as separate to nature. And that is actually the heart of a lot of issues that we're facing today, that this kind of separateness, this apartness that we feel, when we are part of it. We are nature. We're part of the ecosystem, whether we like it or not. And so this reclaiming of the biocultural diversity of life, so the diversity that some cultures have never lost, but those cultures themselves are often at risk. So increasing and celebrating Indigenous knowledge. And when I say Indigenous knowledge, obviously Gaia has worked an awful lot with communities in other parts of the world, but especially with the Seed Sovereignty program, we're bringing it back home. And we're working in the UK, we're working in Ireland, and the tropes are the same. The elders are the same. The wisdom is the same. And why we might be a couple of generations removed from some of the other communities we worked in, we still have it in living memory, and it's so important that we safeguard that and we teach it and we spread it. So yeah, lots to do with biodiversity and cultural biodiversity, safeguarding that and supporting communities to reconnect with their ancestral lands, with their sacred natural sites, and to really protect communities that live regeneratively and live in kind of harmony with the ecosystem, to learn from them and to bring that into our own lives. So here in the UK and Ireland, like I said, Gaia works all over the world, but this is one of the first programs that brought it back home. Gaia is based in London. And since 2017, it's been running the Seed Sovereignty program, which does a whole host of things. I just came from an event that we were playing music and looking at oak dehullers and learning how to brew beer from bare barley and all sorts.
Wow.
So you don't really know what a day will bring for you. But it's basically about regaining that seed sovereignty, regaining the knowledge of seed saving and seed sharing and seed selling. But when we did a survey in 2017, and countries and organizations and communities around the world are really wakening up to seed sovereignty and what that means. And when I say sovereignty, I don't mean our seeds, no one else's. I mean that communities have a right to the culturally appropriate seeds, to save them, to share them. At the moment, 60% of our seeds worldwide are owned by 4 companies. And while that might seem like just an offhand kind of statistic, when you think about what it means to own a seed, something that's been cultivated for thousands and thousands of years, something that our ancestors, gave freely, are now being owned by these conglomerates that is putting an awful lot of strain on a lot of farmers. So yeah, that kind of that regaining or reclaiming of seed is really important, and the practical ways that you do that are many. So from actually teaching people how to produce seeds, how to grow open pollinated seeds as opposed to hybrid seeds, and just celebrating that culture behind it.
Yeah, you're really it really is something to have, corporate ownership of what is essentially life on planet Earth in a sense, isn't it? Going right back to the seed. So it really strikes me how critical the work is and how urgent it is that for food systems, for ecosystems. And I know that there's some trailblazing work happening in Ireland as well. And particularly with Claire O'Grady-Walsh, who I know is joining us today, and she's spoken at many previous Afri events, and she's an incredible leader in this field. So you've been collaborating with Claire and others I believe, in Trinity College.
That's right. Yeah. Well, first of all, to say that there are many brilliant organizations that have been working in seed sovereignty and seed security for many years. Irish Seed Savers Association is one closer to home. I think they're celebrating their 30th birthday this year, and they do fantastic work. But yeah, I had the great pleasure of meeting Claire probably June or July of last year. Claire will set me right if she's in the chat. But Claire's just an absolute beacon of hope for seed.
Yeah.
The work that she's doing with kind of weaving together her background of activism and academia to create the Seed Sovereignty Group in Trinity, which will next year become a centre. It's genuinely very exciting. It's the first of its kind in the world. The things that she's hoping to do out of that centre are just really quite groundbreaking. And it's absolutely the time for it. I think anyone working in seed, anyone working in kind of regenerative agriculture will understand when I say that it's very exciting times. It's bleak times and it's scary times, but it is so exciting because there's so much happening. There's a groundswell really, really happening. And Claire is right on the cusp of that. And the work that she's doing, bringing in great organizations globally for this institute, and it's really going to focus on seed law, seed policy, and seed practice. So it's going to kind of run the gambit of the areas that it will look at in seed. But it's really going to be, although it will be housed in an academic institution and quite a hallowed one, it will be very much grassroots, and it will be looking again for that kind of indigenous knowledge, that ancestral knowledge almost, to go back to things that have worked for generations instead of trying to recreate the wheel. So yeah, brilliant work. All the power to Claire and her team, and really look forward to seeing what else comes out of that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sinead. It's been great talking to you. I was really captured by something you said there about, I can't recall exactly the words, but it was something around bleak times and scary times, but also exciting times. And I feel that myself a lot of the time, that there tends to be kind of binary views of hope, or the world that we're in, that, oh, we're all doomed, or else it's all like la la la, hopey happiness. But you can actually have both at the same time, and really it's a choice about which path we follow, which one we amplify, and which one we really drive home. And but again, like, not to shy away from the scariness and the bleakness of it, but then to have the courage and the strength to forge that new path that you're doing with this work, and with Claire and all those others. And I really got this sense that we're in a moment, and I really feel that hope from you in the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel very grateful that I'm working in seed, because what better symbol of hope than the seed? It's really life-giving work. And through the lockdown and through all the madness of the past year, I've been, pushing seed, and I've been chatting to seed growers, and I've been, working with farmers, and I feel very grateful for that. Not everyone has that kind of boost. But it's not rosy times. It's chaotic. But true change can only come out of chaos. We have to mix things up. It wasn't working. The system that we were in was just supporting the issues that we're facing in terms of climate change and climate collapse. And so this big shake-up, although it's painful, it doesn't mean that it's going to get worse. And it is necessary for things to get better. But it's up to each of us what we choose to do. And it is indeed up to all of us, because each and every one of us have to jump on board. And I think one of the most powerful things for me in the past year is how, all of the organizations and small scale companies that we work with that sell locally produced seed, they cannot keep their their shops open because seed is going off the shelves. I'm sure, again, there are people here who have been trying to get seed and haven't been able to because people are growing again. You know, what more foundational, literally grounding work can you do than putting a seed in the ground and nourishing it? So I would encourage everyone to do that. Literally grow, and it's you know, you start to feel the hope.
Get out there and pull your fingers in the earth. Love it. Thanks, Sinead. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rory.
Talk to you again.
Well, thank you very much, Rory, and great to see that things are moving along well. It's great to hear that so many people are joining us. You know, usually we would meet people in Kildare, we'd have a chat, we'd have lunch, we'd plant a tree. So there would be that great sense of community. But I think insofar as is possible, we have attempted to recreate that today again. But really, I'm here now to introduce a good friend and colleague in Afri, Pete Mullineaux. We first met Pete 15 years ago. We met him in Lewisburg in County Mayo, where we have our annual famine walk. Then we've more or less continued to work with him since then. We're talking about the good things that have come from lockdown. And some of the good things have come from Pete's house. He has produced 2 books, would you believe it? Not 1, but 2. This one here, which is Interdependence Day. It's an amazing book teaching the Sustainable Development Goals through drama for all ages. And, you know, Afri wasn't able to complete the schools program in 2020, again, for obvious reasons. So what we did instead was created some resources that will be there for students and for teachers. One of those resources is this book produced by Pete. It's a fantastic book, and it's a record of an extraordinary career in promoting global justice through theatre and drama. You know, I've said before that I've seen Pete in action, and it always amazes me, his ability to work with young people, to motivate them, to get them enthusiastic, and it's a fantastic thing. So Pete has produced this. He has also produced a novel called Jules and Rom, based on the great Shakespearean play. It's a science fiction work, so that's something to look out for. I think that's going to be published later. And out of the same house, his partner, Moya Ruddy, has also produced a book during lockdown called A Wiser Girl, I think. So, you know, during the lockdown, 3 publications have come from the Mullineaux-Roddy household. So I don't know, should we be hoping that this lockdown continues, Pete?
Oh, thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for what you said. And there was lovely words. And I was just remembering how how I first met you that time back in the famine walk in Lewisburg. But then how you came to me, and just listening to Sinead there talking, it reminded me of how you asked me, would I put on a play with some teenagers in Dublin, in Crumlin, for Féile Bríde coming up that year. And you told me it's going to be all about seeds. And we had to go away and devise a play about seeds for an international conference to be presented to people who were experts from all over the world, who knew everything there was to know about seeds. But my 15, 16-year-olds were going to have to entertain them and educate them somehow. And somehow we came up with this amazing play called Jackie and the Beanstalk, all based on that amazing moment in the story of where the beans, the seeds are thrown out of the window, the useless seeds, and they grow into this amazing beanstalk and become a great hope for change. And that was all about seeds. And I remember going into the schools with Claire O'Grady Walsh, being first turned on to the whole idea of seeds and how important they are. So it's a great sort of coming round, a full circle for today. So yes, thanks for Joe and everything you said about the new book. And I want to thank you and Larissa and Raj and Rory and everybody involved in Afri for supporting me in writing the book, to World Rise Global Schools and to Irish Aid for sponsoring it. A big thank you to Audrey Walsh for her fantastic, beautiful cover design, which is just simply gorgeous. Aisling Cunningham for doing the design on the book inside, which is also very beautiful. Very grateful to them. And I want to I'll just say something about the book. The title Interdependence Day comes from it's a kind of an alternative take on the movie, the sci-fi movie Independence Day. And in the book, there's a project where there's a science fiction scenario where visitors have arrived from another galaxy and they're hovering above the Earth, and they've decided that they're saying to us, look, unless we can sort out the muddle we're in, unless we can sort out the mess, unless we can do something to prove that we can actually really genuinely save the planet and deliver those sustainable development goals, they're going to land and take over, and we'll just be reduced to a secondary species. And in the context of a classroom, the children, during the course of the session, have to prove themselves and on behalf of humanity that they do understand the goals. And so that's what happens. And that's going to be my cue for my poem written for today, which is called Interdependence Day, for the day that's in it. So, when visitors from space arrive and give us a fright, challenge our right to manage the Earth, we must show we are worthy, prove ourselves earthy. Put away our weapons this time, not even try to fight. Hold on to each other tight, holding on for all we are worth. Show we are worth it. We can be true to our souls. We can deliver those goals. When we get our first sight of their amazing starship, we respond with partnership, interconnection, joined up thinking and joined up feeling, symbiosis, not psychosis. Everything is interdependent, the Dalai Lama says. We must make amendment, change our ways. Become just one part of nature, alongside plants and animals, the bugs and bacteria, fungi, mycelium, entangled but not strangled by too tight a grip. Nurture more loving relationship with air, water, soil, without which we perish. Cherish. Put an S in front of oil, or make that an SOS. Just one living spoonful of soil contains more microorganisms than every human being that has ever been on this planet. One loving spoonful. Go from hubris to humus. Put away the pesticides, stop the agri-genocide. Flinch at every plastic spoon, each whale harpoon. No more dead whales or powders made from rhino horns, pangolin scales. When our visitors arrive and invite us to reveal ourselves, show we understand the urgency, emerge from this emergency with competency, kindness, empathy, find inspiration in Brigid, nurture the flame of her spirit, reaffirm how we are in this together, gather and tether, show our true mettle. And when they say our time is up, and even as the credits roll on this Planet B movie, emerge from calamity, regain our humanity, show we are sustainable, that we are able, say hiya to Gaia. Plant a tree at Féile Bríde with Afri, a heart seed of hope and kindness, true awareness, confidence arm in arm with humility. How can we survive any other way? It has to be Interdependence Day. Thank you so much, Joe and Afri and everyone here joining us from all over the world, zooming in at Féile Bríde for a fantastic day, a most amazing celebratory, delightful experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it. That was great. Well done on the great work. Congrats on the publication as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, folks, we're in the final session here, and we're going to be singing us out with some music. But I do have a couple of things I want to share before we conclude as well. Firstly, just a small order of business is that Afri is a small, but as I said, powerful organization, but it's fiercely independent. And because of that, the voice and the support of people and in order to do that work that it does, campaigning wise and otherwise, through a variety of events, campaigns, development, education work in schools and so on, it relies on and appreciates whatever support it can get financially and otherwise. www.afri.ie/donate. All support will be appreciated, and that link will be going out. And special thanks to anybody who has contributed particularly on a once-off, but also on a monthly direct debit or standing order basis. I want to say a big special thanks to all the contributors, to Rita Minehan, to Dee and Louis, to Karen and Garrett from Síolta Chroí. I'll be sharing their website link shortly as well. To Grace Wells, to Ruth, to Sinead Fortune, to Pete, to Raj, Whelan and Paul O'Toole for music that you're about to see as well. And to all of you for being part of this. I know we were kind of separated in one sense, but hopefully you can kind of feel the energy of community, the energy of connection, that we are part of something together. I certainly feel it. It's something, that connectivity gives me hope. It gives me energy. It gives me confidence that we're going to get through this turbulence that we're in right now, but we're going to do more than get through. We're going to bust through and redefine things, reimagine things, and to build a better Ireland and a better planet.
Well, thanks, Rory. Well done. Also, just to thank our other funders, Irish Aid, Concern, Trócaire. This is done in collaboration with St. Patrick's Missionary Society. Thanks to them, Tom O'Connor and friends in Kiltegan. The Brigidine Sisters, our partners, and Cáirde Bríde, and the St. Stephen's Green Trust as well have been supporting Afri. So we acknowledge that support. As Rory said, it wouldn't be possible for us to continue without such support and without the support of individuals around the country who have kept us going for nearly 45 years now, and we hope to continue into the future. And we very much look forward to seeing people, hopefully on the Famine Walk, either virtually or in reality, and certainly in Kildare next year for our 30th Féile Bríde.
Thanks again, folks, and let's try and get this music happening.
Just look around at all we got, and all we made. When it's all said and done, love is all that we made. Just look around at all we lost. We ain't got no time to waste while the sun shines down on us. We will make hay. It's gonna be okay when it's all over. And I'll thank the gods you made. You're all I could wish for. Tomorrow, great things are gonna come our way. Just look around at this heaven. It's been there all along, but couldn't hear her song. Remain with the Great Spirit, because sure fly away. Just look inside it all you are. There ain't nothing that they can't take. When you fall and have lost it all, your light will shine the same, while the whole world would change. long, but I couldn't hear her song. Remain with the Great Spirit, because sure fly away, stuck inside it all. You are, there ain't nothing that they can say. When you fall, have lost it all. Your light will shine the same, while the whole world would change. Where the hell can you go? Far from the things that you know, far from the sprawl of concrete that's crawling its way. About 1,000 miles a day. Take one last look behind. Commit this to memory and mind. Don't miss this wasteland, this terrible place when you leave. Keep your heart off your sleeve. Motherland, cradle me, close my eyes, lullaby me to sleep. Keep me safe, lie with me, stay beside me, don't go. Don't you go. Oh, my 5-and-dime queen, tell me the things that you've seen. The lust and the avarice, bottomless and cavernous greed. That what you see. Motherland, cradle me, close my eyes, lullaby me to sleep. Keep me safe, lie with me, stay beside me, don't go. It's your happiness I want most of all, and for that I'd do anything at all. You want the best of life and the most of love. If there's anything I can do at all, come on, shotgun bride. What makes me envy your life? The faceless, nameless, the innocent and blameless and free. What's it like to be? Motherland, cradle me, close my eyes, lullaby me to sleep. Keep me safe, lie with me, stay beside me, don't go. Motherland, cradle me, close my eyes, lullaby me to sleep. Keep me safe, lie with me, stay beside me, don't go. Don't you go.